you ever looked back at your life and noticed that your biggest turning points seem to have arrived on schedule, right at a certain age, or right after you turn a certain age, or even before you turn a certain age? Like, why is there a collective wave of identity crisis before so many people reach their 30th birthday? And why does midlife crisis happen the way it does, exactly around the same time for everyone? If you ask an astrologer, they will tell you that you're simply responding to planetary transitions, right? But if you ask a psychologist, they will tell you that the stars have nothing to do with it. They will argue that it's a mix of human biology, social pressure, and deeply ingrained cognitive biases. Today, we're looking at these two fascinating schools of thought head to head. We're exploring major life transition everyone experiences and looking at the radical explanation from both sides. My name is Soti the Spirit Being, and welcome to my channel. To understand this debate, we first have to understand how each of the schools of thought read the map of your life. The astrologers operate on the concept of transit. Think of your birth time, the second you were born, the day, the place, a snapshot of the sky, the planetary positions at the exact time you were born. That's what makes up your birth chart. Now, the planets are constantly moving around that blueprint. So when a moving planet forms an angle to a planet in your birth chart, it lights up that area. It's simple. Now, because these outer planets move at fixed mathematical speed, they act like the hand of a massive celestial clock, striking a universal milestone for everyone that clocks that age on Earth. While the psychologists, they don't believe that astrology works. They believe it's a classic case of projection and that it only works because of your mind. Skeptics call this the Barnum effect. Our human ability or our human tendency to believe that vague universal statements are highly specific to us. It's like when someone say, "Oh, I'm a Gemini. Geminis were the life of the party." And this triggers confirmation bias because when you read a horoscope in, a time of crisis, and the horoscope shows you that, this time of your life, there's going to be crisis, you now pick that up. That is what the psychologists believe, that you pick that up and apply it to yourself. So we're going to be looking at these two schools of thoughts head to head against the most chaotic milestones of human life. Who's going to win? Let's get right into it. The first massive existential shift happens between 27 and 30 for most people. For people like me, I had my first one in my early 20s and then again in my late 20s. Well, astrologers believe that there are two explanations for this. At first, when you turn 27, there's the progressed lunar return, where the moon finishes its structural loop and resets your emotional blueprint. It forces you to outgrow old coping mechanisms. And right on its heel is the heavyweight champion of astrology, the Saturn Return, that happens at 29. Now, Saturn takes about 29 and a half years to orbit the sun. So when it returns to that place it was at your birth, it doesn't beg, it demands a cosmic audit. It would break every shaky job, dismantle every toxic relationship, and force you into maturity. Now, it feels like an existential crisis, but to an astrologer, it's just a cosmic law being enforced. Interestingly, even the famous psychologist Carl Jung used astrology for his clients. He once wrote that we are born at a given time, in a given place, and like the vintage years of wine, we have the qualities of the year and the season of which we are born. Those are the words of Carl Jung. Jung actually calculated birth charts for his clients when it was difficult for him to diagnose them. He viewed astrology as a tool, a psychological tool. But modern day psychology offers a strictly biological counter-argument. Neurologists point out that This exact same window, which is between the 27 and 30, in fact, new research says it even gets up to 32. They said this window is when the final maturation of the human prefrontal cortex happens. And the prefrontal cortex is responsible for logical reasoning, emotional regulation, risk assessment, long-term planning. So psychologists believe you're not going through a Saturn return, you're just looking at life through adult clarity. Now, combining biological shifts with the massive cultural anxiety of turning 30, a crisis is bound to happen without the, planetary transitions. Now, it begs the question, what if it's actually the planetary transitions? Just what if our brains, the planetary transition actually affects the maturation of our brains? What if it's a combination of both? Let's continue. According to Erikson, humans around 40, they just naturally realize, you know what? My time on earth is halfway gone. I'm 40. What's the next 40 years going to look like? Because my best years are behind me, basically. So if a person fails to find meaning in this phase, a sense of stagnation takes over that person. Now, to a psychologist, the urge to quit your job or even reinvent your identity at 42 is not a planetary alignment. It's just a mental friction of facing your own mortality. Look at, I'm aging, I'm 40. Now, skeptics argue that our brain uses natural soothing. It's, incredibly painful to look at your life and, admit that you're actually experiencing a dip in dopamine, or you're simply bored of your life, the life you've lived over the last 20 years. And it's far more exciting to believe that you're experiencing a Uranus awakening. So your brain uses this confirmation bias to validate your internal panic by anchoring it to the sky. Beyond these massive age milestones, the two schools of thought argue over who's right, who's wrong. Astrologers track personal cycles using Jupiter, which brings about optimism and opportunity to whichever area they touch. And on the flip side, Saturn, which brings about boundaries, heavy workload, and a reality check. If Jupiter is your accelerator, Saturn is the brake. Now, psychologists completely flip the script on these cycles. It explains them through selective attention. If you believe that Jupiter is entering a particular planet and you're going to be lucky, your brain actively scans your environment for positive opportunities you would normally ignore. You start taking more risk, network confidently, and create your own luck. If you also believe that you are entering a heavy Saturn restriction period, you become hyper focused on obstacles, interpreting standard life difficulties as cosmic trials. Psychologists argue that because your expectations are driving your behavior, that these results occur, not because of the sky. So does astrology work if you don't believe in it? If you ask a scientist, they'll tell you no. They'll tell you that astrology is a narrative tool we use to help project meaning into a chaotic, unscripted world. If you ask an astrologer, they would say yes. They'll tell you that the cosmic clock keeps ticking, whether you choose to believe in it or not. Now, the ultimate takeaway is not whether astrology is wrong or psychology is right, or astrology is right and psychology is wrong. It is where they perfectly agree. Both the ancient astrologer and the modern psychologist look at human life and map out the exact same window for crisis, maturity, and transformation. Meanwhile, I just needed to put this out there that astrology is thousands of years older than psychology. So if this deep dive challenged your perspective, hit the like button, subscribe, and follow me for more hidden frameworks of our world. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think the clock about your life is in the sky, or is it just in your mind? Until next time, keep looking up. My name is Soto the Spirit Being, and I honor the divinity that resides in you.